Stony Hill.
Oh, good morning.
Good morning.
What was it? Well, it certainly wasn't human. It was about 7 feet tall and very dark grey shape. And I looked at it, and after I looked at it, it just glided off the path.
Was it in the shape of a human being?
It wasn't the shape of a human, yes.
Did you get any feeling from it? Did you feel that it was evil?
Yes, I did feel it was evil. Because the last time I actually saw its face, and it looked like it had been dead for a long time.
They were Farrow's first words, first public words on television. They were transmitted on the 13th of March 1970, and this was around the time I became acquainted with him, particularly in the coal bunker, where I spoke to him and understood his purpose. He was known to everyone, maybe not his wife Mary, but to everyone he was known in Highgate as Alan. His own spelling being A-L-L-A-N. We believe inspired by his love of Alan Ladd, the film star, and cowboy films. But speculation aside, everyone in Highgate and probably beyond knew Farrow as Ellen. Nobody would know who you were talking about if you spoke of David. David who, they would say, whereas everyone knew who Alan was. And in fact, Farrow himself used the Christian name Alan all the time when introducing himself or mixing socially. It was in 1970, at some point, that he adopted the surname Farrow, and for a while that became his own, and many who associated him with the incidents at the time, and in certain media and newspapers, would refer to him as Farrow, invariably Alan Farrow. There was another Farrow who took our attention in the 60s, and that was Mia. She had been in some fairly spooky films and one or two other films which certainly presented her as this beautiful young thing. And in the year 1968, she became prominent due to her journey to India with the Beatles and the scandal surrounding that. But more of that later. Mia Farrow was a big star at that time and much loved by many. Then it all went wrong when choices were made that were to her detriment. One could say the same of Alan Farrow. Choices were made by him that were very much to his detriment. But at this time, when I knew him first, he was an occupant of a coal bunker, or would be at least, owned by Tony. At precisely the time when Mia Farrow was in India in 1968, Tony was in Devon with Mary Farrow, and there they would be for at least half a year. They had been, shall we say, having an affair for longer than that. She was the barmaid at the Woodman. I didn't really know her. And became pregnant during this period. From August 1969, recently evicted and made bankrupt, Farrow himself was invited to take up occupation in Tony's coal bunker, and did so. This would last 12 months, until his arrest in Highgate Cemetery by police, following 5 months following his interview given on Thames Television in March earlier that year. And this is the essential beginning of the story for me. This is where I became acquainted with the machinations and stratagems and goings on of Alan Farrow.
Tony Hill. It's Mr. Hill.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did you see the Donovan documentary?
No,
90 minutes.
I'm not that keen. Oh, Donovan the photographer.
No, Donovan Leach,
Donovan
as opposed to Donovan Farrow. But there was lots of Farrow in it, of the Mia kind.
When was it on?
I watched it in the last couple of weeks. They will repeat it. It was on Sky.
Oh.
So they will repeat it. McLean missed it as well. Young Keith, he missed it.
What's it called?
Oh, Donovan, the Beatles, and India, I think. And of course,
Is that Donovan, the singer?
Donovan Leach.
Is he the singer or the purported to be singer? Mellow Yellow Man.
Yes, indeed. Not this Yellow Submarine, but the Mellow Yellow Submarine.
Mellow Yellow Man, yeah.
And it's.
I did see it, but I avoided it because...
You did see it?
I didn't. I did see it in the listings, but I don't particularly like Donovan and his silly songs, so I didn't watch it.
Of course, 1968 being such a year when you think about it. I mean, Donovan was not only in the ashram with the Beatles
And the Yogi Bear.
and Yogi Bear, but there was also the Mia Farrow scandal, really, at that time, and of course there was the Alan Farrow scandal also at that time. So you have Donovan Leach, you have Donovan Farrow, you have Mia Farrow, you have the coal bunker at 294 Archway Road, and you have the derelict ashram in India. I thought the documentary was very interesting, if only in a reflective way. I mean, he did touch on, as does, I think the only other person I know that's touched on it is John Lennon in his sort of mini memoir called Lennon Remembers. And he touched on Mia Farrow. I mean, that's what brought the whole thing to an end, a very abrupt end. And, oh, it reminds me, do you still have the lyrics to your song, Maharishi He?
I could probably remember them.
Okay, well, I might have your original scribbling. It's quite small handwriting on a...
It sort of went... Tell me, what did you see there? Nothing but the Yogi Bear. Something like that.
Yeah, it was actually quite good.
Maharishi.
He. Yeah. I seem to remember that in one of my locked, small, you know, those mini small safes for documents, I seem to remember seeing it there in the original hand on a piece of scrap paper. It was as per normal.
Yeah.
In what looks like either pencil or biro, I'm not sure, but I shall certainly seek it out, no question about that. And of course, what was for me interesting was the perspectives, looking back now. And Donovan's very sort of, I don't know, well, he's quite an honest chap, I think. But
Paddy.
he was born in Glasgow, but of Irish grandparents.
Right. Paddy Whack.
And he's born in the same year as you, of course, the month before you.
Oh.
Which is again an interesting... I mean, there's so many sort of weird and wonderful connections, if you wish to make them, back to 1968.
I do like Sky Arts. They do come out.
They're excellent, aren't they?
I haven't watched it yet. I taped it. I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's the guy who fooled up the art world by making artifacts and painting paintings in his back shed.
Yes.
I think his name was Sean something.
Manchester?
No, not quite. that was on a couple of days ago, and I'm pretty sure that would be worth a watch.
Oh, indeed so. But you still have the Donovan, do you? The Donovan, the Beatles, and I think in India. You still have that, do you? You haven't deleted it?
I'll dig it out.
It's very recent. I mean, it was only recorded, I think, in the last year. But I obviously and it's all synchronicity in a sense for me, because having just, and I don't think you've seen the final impression of my portrait in watercolour of Mia Farrow, which I'm rather pleased with.
I've seen one, haven't I?
No, you haven't seen the one.
Oh, right.
The finished job using watercolour, but also a little acrylic and ink, and it really is. And that I did, of course, prior to this programme, only just. And the revelations on it, well, not really revelations, because I already knew it, having read Lennon Remembers. But I have to say, it reminded me, brought me back to the stark reality that the reason the Beatles, what was left of them, because I think Ringo and Maureen had already left and gone back to England, but there remained McCartney, Lennon and Harrison. And then there was this, Mia Farrow business, where the word was that she had been raped by the Maharishi, Yogi Bear, and they just in that instant packed their bags and left. It's all covered in the documentary, and that was more or less the end. John Lennon wrote on the wall, "He's just a con man," and that's still there to this day, all these years later. Goodness, how many years? A long time. And
He didn't con Ringo, did he?
yeah, I don't know. I don't think.
I quite like Ringo. He
Of
went
course
his
you
own
do.
way, didn't he?
Yeah.
He never got tied up in any of the fads.
No, but John Lennon saw through it straight away and said, "Oh no, I'm not having that." And he didn't, and they all came back to England. George Harrison was a little bit reticent and didn't want, you know.
He was a Bangladesh chanter, wasn't
He was indeed,
he? Yeah.
and and
Still get them, you know,
I know.
up and down the high road.
Yeah, but I don't go up and down that particular high road, do I?
No.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be the same.
Well, I like it now because I've got my hat and mask on. And anyone I don't want to see, or I don't want to particularly have my ear bent by them, I just walk happily by and they don't know I exist. Quite good. Yeah, it's very nice.
But when I started painting Mia Farrow, I didn't have any of this in mind. I had the 60s in mind, and 68 obviously always features strongly, that latter part of the 60s. But it was, when I completed it, it was in its early stages, and that's what you've seen, early impressions. And I wasn't 100% happy with it. Sarah didn't look at it actually, so I didn't get her impression, but she promised to, but I don't think she did. I think she knew intuitively that it wasn't finished. I finished it only this week, and I'm very, very happy with the outcome. I think you will be when you see it.
Yeah.
But of course, all this happened, you know, all this regurgitation of 1968 occurred and is still reverberating, I dare say, after I'd begun painting the portrait of Mia Farrow. And of course it sucks in all those other, well, I can't call them coincidences because few things are coincidental. But you have Farrow in the bunker, whose name is Donovan, or third name. Yes, his third Christian name is Donovan, or was. And it all ties in a curious sort of way, in a sort of cosmic way, as Donovan would describe it. Donovan Leitch, that is. Spelt Leitch.
Right, of course, there was also the Woody Allen incident.
That came later. I think
Was he named after Woody Woodpecker?
I'm pretty sure of it.
Yeah, I don't know any other Woodies.
No, I mean he'd have to be, wouldn't he? But certainly looks like him.
Yeah, only he doesn't. I mean, Woody Woodpecker leaves him standing. Let's face it.
Indeed
I've
so.
never quite got his films.
Yeah.
They've not quite. I'm not connected with them, as they say.
No, I understand that. No, Sarah absolutely hates his films.
Although Woody Woodpecker's films I have.
Oh, indeed. I was brought up on them. Yeah, I was raised on Woody Wood in the cinema. You know, you went to the West End to the cinema, and in between the films, there'd be all these cartoons.
Yeah, love it.
And Woody was Woody always had a big part to play, didn't he?
Yeah, Woody Woodpecker. Can't beat them.
But
I don't know what all these kids now, they're missing it. They're going on.
yeah, I know.
Battle games
I
and all
know.
that nonsense.
I know.
You know, Woody Woodpecker. The two kids I coach, I show them all the old.
I hope so.
All the Looney Tunes. They love them.
Indeed.
Love a Looney Tune.
Despite their political incorrectness.
Yeah.
But I personally think you mentioned that appalling episode when she was married to Woody Woodpecker, and I think her problems began back at the ashram in '68. I mean, if you look at photographs of her through those, even the films she made, right from when she was in the television series, when she was a teenager, right through to what's that one where she's gives birth to the devil or the demon?
Oh yes, I remember it.
With Roman Polanski.
Yeah, quite a good movie actually.
Yes, directing. I mean, she's absolutely beautiful, and she was when she went with the Beatles and the rest of them. You know,
Serene.
very, and of course her sister, who was even more enthusiastic for what the Maharishi had on offer. Her sister, of course, is whom the Beatles dedicated or wrote. Dear Prudence is Prudence Farrow, her sister.
Oh, I thought it was a cat.
No, it was Prudence, the sister of Mia, who also went to the
I
ashram.
linked all the lyrics up with some old moggy.
No, nothing of that kind. But, and of course, Sexy Sadie was originally going to be titled by Lennon as Maharishi. And Harrison talked him out of it. He said, no, I think that would be a bit disrespectful. And Lennon sort of, well, that's what I intended it to be. But unfortunately, the Harrison held sway, and the title of that track, which is all about Maharishi Yogi Bear, is actually now titled Sexy Sadie. And of course, they all cooled off almost instantaneously when the Farrow episode occurred, as many people did back in London.
Stop wearing the goat skins.
Yeah, you mean the Afghan coat? Do you remember those? But just as in almost exactly the same way and the moment, everything cooled off back in London in the coal cellar, where Farrow suddenly, with all his drinking companions in the Prince and elsewhere, became yesterday's news and fell out of favour. And it all tied in. But I feel personally, having an interest in photographs and seeing the pictures of her, the stills and also the movie of her from the period up till then, including then, the period after, she just got, I don't know, she just changed. And it wasn't that she
become Sinatra's girl.
Oh, yes, she was. Yes, she looked quite.
Blue eyes.
Yes, she
Can charm 'em.
yeah, she was quite pleasant looking then as well. But after the Woody Woodpecker scene, I don't know what to say, but the kindest thing and most charitable remark I could say is that she looked like an inmate at a lunatic asylum. I know that her accoutrement didn't help. These huge Lennon Plus, massive round spectacles that sort of have enormous magnifying quality. She had her hair all frizzed with a perm, so all sticking out, and not particularly long, sticking out. And she had this look of bewilderment, mixed with a form of derangement. And it wasn't the mere that I remembered. This was post Woody, of course.
Saying Frizz
Yes.
reminded me of Farron's sidekick almost, Fat Frizz.
Oh, I'm trying to bring that memory back.
Fat Frizz. Well, funnily enough, when the cellar episode, as you say, Fat Frizz was never seen again. Fat Frizz abandoned Farron.
Are we talking about that rather squat female?
No.
No.
This is Fat Frizz. No, Fat Frizz was very much on the scene.
Right. What was he, a drinking partner in the?
Yeah, he liked the pint, Fat Frizz did.
What, in the village?
Fat Frizz was the most ordinary person you could ever meet.
That would do, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and as the name implies, he was fat and frizzy.
I just can't bring him to mind. Maybe that's a blessing. I don't know.
Browny ginger hair, frizzy hair.
Yeah, that's.
But he did abandon him once Farron went into the cellar.
Oh, he was in the Farrow circle, was he?
Well, he was. I mean, Farrow absolutely adored Fat Frizz.
I imagine.
Yeah.
As a drinking partner.
Well, Fat Frizz used to go to his flat and everything.
What, before he was
Cellarised.
and living off celery.
I had many amusing evenings listening to him trying to get in the knickers of this girl, Claire.
I remember. Now, she was the dumpy one I'm thinking of.
We had, no, she had enormous tits.
But she was still quite squat and short.
Yeah, but not fat.
But young. She was quite young. I think she was underage, wasn't she?
Probably, weren't they all?
But I remember her, yes. And didn't you have
We had a baby
alarm? Yes.
And I rigged it up down there so if anyone came round and Farron tried to get some old tart downstairs.
In the coal bunker.
We could also reverse it so we could
Make noises.
yeah, make creepy noises sometimes. If I got up for a piss in the early hours of the morning, I used to turn it on and scream down the...
But of course, none of that would, apart from disturbing sleep, would bother anyone because nobody actually subscribed to the existence of such supernatural phenomena. But I remember Claire, yes. I didn't ever speak to her, but she was not particularly... I didn't find her friendly.
She was all right.
Was she?
Her sister was very tasty.
Was she indeed?
Yeah.
I do remember the visits from Narva Grumberg.
Nova, yeah. Oh, Nova.
Now, unlike Claire, whom I didn't really know at all, but saw, Narva Grumberg was always very friendly toward me, despite everything.
She was quite a nice girl, wasn't she?
Yes, but she's constantly smoking dope.
Yeah.
Back then, and right until the last time I saw her in Highgate High Street, her eyes were all red and glazed, and she was very, very friendly.
A name that's dropped out of popularity recently, but she was called Narva the Charmer. I haven't heard that news for a long time.
Do you remember the famous 35mm panchromatic I took of the pair of them at the top of the cellar stairs, just on the landing, where they were doing a nose to nose?
Oh, great.
I've still got the panchro somewhere, the negative.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I haven't got the positives, but I could dig out, if time allowed, the negatives. I think you were present, or somebody was, and it was at the top of, when you get to the top of those steep and narrow wooden stairs,
yeah.
And then you're on the landing, and it's like something out of a B horror film. I mean, there was nothing sexual going on with Narva.
Seems to ring a bell.
Yeah, and I caught it on panchromatic, and it was a nice picture in a way because it told the whole story. But of course, Narva was only ever a friend, but for a very long time he always referred to her as his best friend.
His best friend.
Yes.
Oh,
And
wow.
she was in charge of the parrot before it was sort of, I don't know, I can't remember those girls' names just up from the where it ended up whilst he was inside. But yes, he trusted Narva an awful lot. He did trust her. And if he trusts her with Oliver the parrot, he trusts her. Because that was his most precious...
Was Oliver still going then?
Oh yes!
Did he actually have the parrot in the cellar?
No, it was being looked after.
Oh, right.
And I think Narva was sort of a facilitator, but it was those two girls where he'd stored some of his stuff. Just
Right.
you're right. You know.
I remember one.
Ah, right. In cardboard boxes, and funnily enough, there were some tapes. Oh well. Seems a 1,000 years ago, but it also seems like yesterday.
Yeah. It was another world, wasn't it?
Totally.
Even pre-Farrow, it was another world.
Oh, very much
In
so.
fact, I preferred it then. It
Pre-Farrow.
was starting to go, wasn't it?
Yes, without question.
Starting to go.
No doubt about that.
But the peak came in the Judy and Jean period.
Yes, weren't they lovely, those Texans?
It must have been a Thursday afternoon.
It must have been.
Yeah, we had some good...
Do you remember whereabouts in the West End it was?
Yeah, it was near Montague Terrace.
Ah, lovely.
Or was it Montague Square? Montague Square.
But
I don't
certainly
think
Montague.
I don't think Montague Terrace exists apart from in a Scott Engels song.
Yes. Well, it certainly exists in the ether and in the memory.
Mm.
And they were the most lovely girls. So fresh, so natural, so, I don't know, seemingly innocent. But their very long legs belied their innocence.
Wonderful Texan accent.
Oh, weren't they just? Yes.
Well,
And
there was always someone, wasn't there? There was always, every little journey out there was someone.
absolutely. Do you remember, well, she came to the studio, but do you remember Bonnie of Bonnie and Clyde?
Oh, yeah.
With the wonderful sunglasses which reflected the whole world. Yes, she was rather good, I thought. Well, I thought they were all good, you know, not least Pud. I thought they were all rather good. They had a special quality which nobody any longer seems to possess. I don't know how much of these things...
Yeah, I think the kids now, that, like, I was going to say their innocence is gone, but they don't have innocence now.
No.
The parents are so coddling of them that they're not allowed to develop. They become young adults after being protected by overparentage all their lives.
Yes, and the parents themselves are so degenerate and that they're almost corrupt in the womb.
But to still have your bottom rights in your 20s almost
Yeah,
is a bit much. I
it
mean,
is.
we had this enormous amount of freedom, didn't we?
Yes.
When I think I cycled to Ramsgate when I was 10 years old.
Around the same time I cycled on my sort of road racing bike to Southend.
Yeah.
And back on the same day.
Oh,
In the rain.
I didn't make it back. Aunt Flo wouldn't let me go back.
Ah.
Aunt Flo made me stay the night and put me on the train with my bike.
It certainly, even earlier than that, I remember cycling to Hampton Court in a lovely sunshine with Thane.
Oh, Thane.
Thane. Yeah.
Bloody hell, plain Thane.
Yes. Whatever happened to Thane?
Yeah.
But he was quite athletic and he loved cycle rides, and we went to Hampton Court and came back again on, so it was a lovely sunny day that though. And I think I was, crikey, I was barely out of junior school when I did that. But you didn't have any fear of anything wrong going to happen?
I used to drag the Hawkins brothers anywhere where there was a bird that I wanted to see. And the poor buggers weren't the slightest bit interested in birds.
Because your ornithological interest goes back a very long way. Goes back to the beginning, doesn't it?
It goes back only till 10 years old. When I cycled that cycle ride to Ramsgate, and I saw a lapwing or green plover, or sometimes country name called peewit.
Ah, the peewit I'm familiar with.
In the middle of a field, and I'd never seen anything like it. And I crawled on my belly, and my uncle George, who was Aunt Flo's spouse, said, go down the pub, there's a lad down the pub, he knows all about birds. And when he came back, he said, you saw a peewit.
I've seen a peewit. We get them round here, you know.
Yeah, they are about. So, next birthday, 11 years old, I got an Observer's Book of Birds. And that was it.
But when did you acquire the sobriquet Eggman for, shall we say, helping yourself to some birds' eggs?
It was something to do. It was something to do with the Tucker, I think.
That late.
I think it was something to do with Zibby Tucker.
That's quite late then.
Desperate for attention.
Well, one might say that.
Yeah, it's sad, an incredibly sad life, really.
Well, certainly.
The sort of lack of any personality, wanting to be something that other people thought he was, you know. Yeah, lack of self.
Yeah, I find it remarkably sad, actually.
Yeah.
Because I think it goes back a way, this addiction to self-publicity, really.
Yeah.
It goes back long before any of us knew him.
Well, I mean, the hair thing and all that, you know,
Hair?
He didn't wash his hair in water.
What did he use?
There's some sort of powder that you can brush into it.
Really?
Yeah, I caught him at it once. And I thought he had fleas. And he said, no, I haven't got fleas. And then he told me he didn't like water on his head. He always carried, and if there was the slightest look of rain about it, he would have that umbrella.
Oh, of course, he did carry an umbrella. Was it a gamp? I suspect it to be a gamp.
Yeah.
And but I never saw him use it.
No, he never went in the water. Never went in the water.
No.
Oh,
Not even a shallow puddle? Yeah.
Yeah, funny fellow.
Yes, and picked up some really curious acquaintances.
And yet his sister was incredibly straight, you know.
The one that went to live in the Australasias, the either...
I think that was much later.
Ah.
Much later, because I saw him with his sister in Hadley Wood.
Right. What was she like?
Yeah, I'd met her before. She was just very ordinary.
Yes. She was his biological full sister, as opposed to the half-brother called Robert Farrow, who was the Messiah in Jesus Christ Superstar.
I didn't even know about him.
Yes, he's still going. He was a pop singer at the time in the 60s. Oh, crikey, I can't think of his name. He went under a...
And he was related, a half-brother to Farrow.
Half-brother, but they never met.
Oh. It's not one of his fantasies, is it?
No, somebody asked him a year or two before he died on his Facebook page or something of that sort. Are you related to the pop singer Robert? Well, he actually used the pop singer's, I can't think of what it is, stage name. And Farrow's response was, yes, I believe I was, but we never met.
Oh.
And he lived in the sort of Hornsey area, Robert Farrow.
Yeah.
And
News to me.
he broke through as a sort of pop star. Oh, funny name, catchy name, but
Because Farrow wouldn't have liked that.
No.
That was someone else getting
that's
in
competent.
the
But what I found most interesting about the juxtaposition of the two was that whilst Farrow's trying to, as it were, sell his soul to the devil, metaphorically or in actual fact, there was his half-brother playing Jesus Christ in the West End musical Jesus Christ Superstar.
Ah.
I've got the photographs and everything. I can send them to you if you wish. And that juxtaposition I found very interesting and sort of almost inevitable. The two Farrows, the two sides of the same coin, yet unaware of each other almost. Again,
That must have been an early marriage of Don.
Now that's a dark area where I have very little information about his father, who was called Donovan also, who had the electrical repair shop and electrical shop in Junction Road. Now you probably know more about him than I do. I only know of his existence, and that Farrow drew his interest in electrical things and putting, fixing things that were electrical from his father, and of course inherited what money he did, and the new.
No, I only knew of the news agent.
Yeah, well, that was a direct inheritance, not inheritance. He was given it.
Yeah.
And he had a half sister, not the one you're talking about, who was ordinary, who was, I think, partly German, and who tried to get it, I'm not sure if she succeeded or not, tried to get the newsagent off him, saying he wasn't entitled to it. And from that point, I remember him telling me this, he hated all Germans. He became germophobic. He really did. Because she was, I think she was half German. But do you remember her trying to get the newsagent?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
But it only took that to turn him into an absolute xenophobe.
He used to amuse me, He never paid any bills. He just used to take the money.
That's right.
And sometimes he just used to close it for ages and ages, that shop.
Do you mean the till at the doll's house?
No, not the...
the newsagent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just took the money out of the till. Well, that won't last long, will it?
No, the Dole's house did quite well because Maura used to run up all these bills with stock she used to buy.
Yeah.
And nobody really paid those bills.
Inevitably.
So it did extremely well for a little while.
And that was his drink. The money in the till there was his drinking money, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
And for quite a few other people as well.
Because the newsagents had already collapsed.
Yes, that was in receivership, I think.
Yeah, that just ran out.
Yes.
That was...
But his hatred towards his stepmother was profound, largely because she wanted the newsagent and frustrated his attempts to keep it.
They didn't own the property.
No.
And I don't think they owned the flat. I'm pretty sure they didn't own the flat.
No. No, it was a...
I mean, there was never any... There was never any sort of assets in that way.
No, that's right. But he was evicted nonetheless and declared bankrupt. Do you remember that was just before his manifestation in the coal bunker?
Yeah. And then he went across the road in that little flat with Frank Stank upstairs.
Yes, that's right. But that was after he had been arrested in August and held on remand. Brixton had an unexpected visit from Smoothie John, and by which time the days of the coal cellar were over.
Yeah.
He must have missed the coal dust. I mean, there was nothing in there but cobwebs and coal dust and coal. There's still a bit of coal in there, you know.
Oh, I'm sure. I wonder if, because there was an exit out onto the pavement.
What do you mean, the hole? The coal hole?
Yeah.
The manhole cover?
Yeah, I like those. I like those.
That was at the far end.
Yeah, I'd collect those if they were still around.
Jeremy Corbyn still does.
Does he?
Yeah.
Good for him.
And also collects photographs of them.
Good for Jeremy.
It gives him credibility, doesn't it, almost?
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. No, I would have loved to have had the coal hole cover as a memento.
Oh, yeah, I think you should have
Imagine
done.
it framed on the wall.
Yeah. What a pity you didn't, eh?
Yeah.
But, yes, that's a curious sort of period. The post-Brixton remand period. He went to Smoothies in Manor Road for a little while. I don't know how long that was, but I think it was a very brief period.
That's right, we caught him there. He phoned us, if you remember.
Did he?
Yeah, he telephoned us.
Yeah, go on.
In Smoothies, saying that he was with a reporter.
Go on.
And I said, give me the number, put the phone down, and I'll phone you back.
Ah.
And he admitted he was at Smoothies.
You got
Yeah, he
him.
admitted. I could tell he was. You couldn't tell a lie.
And get away with it at
Silly
least.
man. I was used to believe him, but you only needed to know him slightly to know when he was lying.
Yeah. Which most of the time, I suppose.
Stammered like I don't know what when he was telling porkies.
A demented caterpillar. But, you know, it was the period after that when he took up occupation of the, I don't know, I did actually see it. It was like a bedsit over the chemist in Archway Road, opposite where he had been before.
Yeah, he offered me once to go up there.
Yes.
But I turned it down.
You know who did go up there? Pamela Wright.
No.
This was in a very benign period where she was a lovely girl and she was nice to everybody. And she thought he needed a meal, and I sort of agreed with her. But she was a vegetarian, as you know. But she did this really delicious meal, lots of garlic. Don't know how that went down with him. And she did it in that flat bedsit, whatever it was, over the chemist, which was his last port of call, really, before he went inside. And I sat and had this vegetarian fare presented and cooked by Pamela Wright with Farrow in that setting, and it was really, really lovely. The food was.
When she was staying at 34.
Yes.
She used to do quite a bit of cooking then.
She was good, wasn't she?
Mm.
What did she? Was she actually staying at 34?
Yeah, she was there for weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
She had this propensity to stay at places.
The Tucker woman really liked her.
Yeah, well, how could you not? She was a darling, she really was.
Oh, I'll never forget coming home for my lunch break, and she was in the garden sunning herself with 2 slices of cucumber on her nipples. And I could see the curtain from all the blokes next door in the upper back room. I could see the curtain going all the time, looking at Pamela, because she had absolutely no tits at all.
What a lovely girl, though. You know, she'd been in the fashion industry as a designer or something.
Yeah, I know, she was a clever girl.
She was, yeah.
She was good company.
I often wonder whatever became of her.
Yeah.
I hope she's not still Maharishiing.
No, I can't imagine it.
I reckon they've run out of Maharishis now.
Yeah.
She was with the Guru boy god, you know, Guru Maharishi Ji. She actually introduced me to him in person. I thought, hello.
Hello. Get the garlic out.
Well, I mean, that prompted him to copy me after the 73. I did it in April 73 to great acclaim and success on the summit of Parliament Hill, and lo and behold, he wanted to do it in June, and he advertised. He spent a lot on advertising, and all these people who are known as devotees came from all over the world. And then he didn't turn up. He was only in Muswell Hill, where his house was, and he explained to the media there wasn't enough love. There wasn't enough love to draw me. He gave that old, you know.
Yeah. That must have been very hard for him.
Well, I attended his Guru Puja at the insistence of Pamela Wright, and I've never been to a Nuremberg rally in my life, too young, but this was what I imagine one would have been like. The chanting, the thousands of people. It was at Alexandra Palace, and you couldn't get in, but I had a ticket. Pamela Wright got me right up on the stage because he was really high up with all these devotees and various, whatever they're called, Mahatmas or whatever they are, all the way down. But he was really so high up in the air with powerful microphones. But she got me right at the front, privileged position, and I thought, oh, let's see what happens here. And lo and behold, it began, and they all started chanting. Imagine thousands in the alley pally chanting, but it had echoes of Nuremberg in what, 36? It did, really. It really did. And he played to the crowd, you know. He really was. But at this point, he was only about 17, something like that. You know, this was, this would be very early 70s. Can't quite pinpoint. It would be post 73, but only just. Maybe it was 73.
Yeah, I can remember the occasion.
Yeah, I bet you can.
Yeah, it wasn't my sort of thing.
No, it's not. But as a photographer and as somebody who likes things that are slightly unusual. And Pamela insisted. Pamela Wright, she never usually insisted quite this strongly, but she absolutely insisted that I accompany her. And of course, she got the best seat. She was right there in touching distance of the Guru.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, you know.
No, she never did any of the old. I think she used to do a bit of yogi.
Really?
If I can remember.
No, she did. What I remember her doing, I said, Guru Maharaj, she did the three degrees meditation that Guru Maharaji Ji.
Maybe that was what it was.
Yeah.
I know when she used to sit on the couch with her legs up.
That's it, meditating.
Hold it underneath her.
Yeah, it wasn't transcendental meditation. It was the Guru, the boy god. What was his name? Guru Maharaji Ji. He had his own method where you swallow your tongue. I mean, I thought, I'm not having any of that.
No.
And your eyes go back in your head.
Oh.
I thought, yeah. Crikey, he's got them going.
I don't want to see what's back there.
And she did his secret. It's called a secret form of meditation, and that's what she was into. But I didn't see too much of her doing it. I mean, I don't think you'd survive too much of that, would you?
No, that would be a bit uncomfortable.
But I've never seen such. I've been to a lot of very big, shall we say, public occasions to either witness or photograph or whatever. And this one was really terrifyingly large. And the way everyone just immediately went into a chant where they knew all the words, and it was like in a choo, 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 choo. It was a rhythm, and there was something slightly sinister. Well, McLean and the Wodge was there, and they said exactly the same thing. They said it was just like a Nuremberg rally, only very much more sinister. And it's strange. A lot of people came away with that impression. Yes, but the Wodge and young Keith couldn't get anywhere as close. They were much nearer the back and got pushed about a bit because there was such a crowd. You know, everyone was pushing and shoving. But I had this extraordinary seat next to Pamela Wright.
She was well read.
She was all right.
That's what surprised me. She'd read a lot of stuff that I'd read.
Yes. Oh, she was Boreham Wood, you know, her parents.
A what?
Boreham Wood.
Good Lord.
I know. And they were sort of quite middle class.
Yeah, there are some sort of Boreham Wood Elstree parts that are
Yes, yes.
a bit posh.
But she didn't seem to be bothered about anything until all the Farrow business hit the headlines with the black magic. And then she was named. I don't think she liked that.
Oh, was she?
Yeah, he named her, and I think he even wanted to subpoena her.
Wow.
She wasn't having it. She disappeared, and the press, I think it was one of the, like News of the World, that sort of thing, on the front page, said so-and-so and so-and-so. They included Johnny. They said, are very frightened of the powers of Farrow. And then they said, but Pamela Wright had disappeared and couldn't be found.
Oh.
Yes, it's on the front
She
page.
never again seen.
Yeah, that she was very wary and, you know, frightened. And it was the headline that said, so it must be 74, Black Magic King jailed.
Oh, right.
And they name Johnny and they name Pamela as being one of the frightened witnesses, and she was one that didn't appear in court.
Oh, well, Johnny didn't appear in court, did he?
I'm not sure he was. He would love to have done. I'm not sure whether he did or not. I imagine having just been in court with Farrow in the same period prior for the arson and the unmentionable which he was found guilty of. And I don't know if he reappeared. I think they'd had enough of him. When he told the judge that he could see a large bird sitting on the judge's shoulder, I think that might have done it for him. And also, he kept giving the judge the Mason in distress signal. Yeah. And he kept overemphasising it and doing it over and over again until the judge said, "What is that you're doing?" You know?
It couldn't happen now, could it?
No, none of it could.
Couldn't happen.
None of it could.
Did it happen?
Well,
Was it another universe?
it must have been. Those that were there can't remember it.
Love it.
I often speak to people who were around who were there,
Yeah.
and they can't remember any of it. It's a bit like the 60s. If you were there, you can't remember it. But it was an astonishing time. And it said in, I think it was the News of the World, Pamela Wright was very frightened by all this, and she'd been called. I'm not sure she'd been summoned as a witness.
I'm sure she wasn't frightened. I just don't think she wanted to be involved.
That's more like.
Yeah.
That's more like.
I mean, could Farrow frighten anyone?
Himself? And only just.
Oh.
I mean, he tried, you know, in the coal bunker, he tried to convince me, or did he do it to you, that he was there a year, wasn't he? And at first, was it longer than that?
No, I didn't think it was that.
Yes, it was from August 1969 to August 1970 when he was arrested.
How did I tolerate him for that? Well, I didn't see much of him, actually.
No. But on one occasion, quite a few months in, he said to me, you know, there is a ghost that passes through the cellar walls. And he says, I'm really terrified by it. But again,
He did
Did he try it on you?
Yeah.
But of course he could see I wasn't wearing that, and I just dismissed it out of hand. But he was really trying to convince me that you know the brick wall as you're looking at the door, not the street. There's this really grimy brick wall full of coal dust. He said it came through there, and it was visible, and he saw it.
Because the actual coal hole itself, I'd done out a long time previous as a dark room.
I didn't see any sign. Are you talking about the communal cellar?
Yeah.
Yeah, but not the coal bunker. The coal bunker was just full of a damp. All it had was a damp, very damp mattress, spiders, and
That was how he made it. But before that, it was quite. There wasn't any webs or anything like that.
Really, they soon reappeared then.
I had it all cleaned out as a dark room. I mean, all around, all the other coal holes and the large storage area were all wrecked. But that particular, once you went in that little area, that was pristine.
Really?
Yeah.
Not once he'd got in there, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember my first visit to the coal bunker to speak to him,
Yeah.
and all I could remember were these scurrying mice, really cobwebs everywhere, and quite a bit of coal at the street end, and a sort of horrible smell, and I don't know.
Oh, there was an awful damp smell down there.
Yes.
All the sort of coaly damp smell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus any others that accumulated, because I'm sure there was rodents that in the communal area had sort of died and were just stinking. Because that communal area was so built up with, I don't know, bric-a-brac and rubbish.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah, did I find the trumpet down there?
that's where I think you stored it.
I think
Oh, you found it. It wasn't yours to begin with.
No, I think I found it down there.
Oh, it went with you. You suited that trumpet.
Oh, did I have it before?
I don't know, but I do know that once you got your mitts on it,
I know I never bought it.
you brought it to the studio, I do recall.
No, I mean I never paid for it. I never got it in
Whoa.
the shop or anything.
I think actually there's a chance that...
The violin was down there as well.
yes, I know. But it was the trumpet, that was the prize. The Chet Baker trumpet. Yeah. You couldn't make any of it up. If you wrote about it, no one would believe you.
No.
Well, I did write about it briefly and no one believed it.
No, too much of a fantasy.
Yeah. And yet we know that and more was true. That and much more was true.
I just, there were so many people. I just wonder how many we've forgotten.
Oh, quite a few,
How many just passed through and got lost in the... Because it was such a busy time, wasn't it?
Victoria never visited 294, did she?
Victoria rings a bell. But
The girl he was arrested in Monk and Hadley churchyard with. And they were both fined and found guilty of indecency. 72 that would have been. Jervis, or as you called her, Jarvis.
I don't remember her name.
Well, it's interesting because she was one of the few. I mean, he used to speak quite with disdain about most females, but that one he really liked. He really, really liked her. She was attractive. I met her after the case in the in a Greasy Spoon. We had a cup of tea after the when he is found guilty of indecency in Monk and Hadley churchyard, and she came over the road and had a cup of tea. She was a lovely girl, bit heavy on the makeup, quite small. Unlike the pictures you see of her, she was diminutive, really small. And well, I mean, she was starting to have breakdowns even then. And of course, when all the stuff at the Old Bailey came out, she was mentioned. I think she was subpoenaed. Oh, she was subpoenaed. And what she said didn't do him any favours. She said that she'd been driven to having a nervous breakdown and that she'd been put up to everything, put up to say things that simply weren't true.
It's probably quite like that. With the notoriety.
These things seem to wash over him, I found.
Oh.
They just washed over him. Yes, but my name's in the papers.
Yeah.
Not yours. Yeah. But she didn't want her name in the papers. That was the one thing that bothered her. And of course then there was...
I don't think you could not understand, but I don't think he actually believed people.
No, that's right.
Who didn't want
publicity. Yeah.
I mean, he never thought that I actually didn't want to have my name mentioned on my photograph. He thought I was planning some kind of launch into celebrity.
Stardom. Yeah. And that, of course, was for you and for many, like Victoria Jarvis, that was the breaking point. You know, you had less and less to do. You still saw him. He still sauntered past the TARDIS. But really, when he started involving people by name, that was really the splitting point. That was where he killed the goose that laid the golden egg and lost all credibility with everyone he knew. I imagine you would know better than I that everyone in the Prince took him less than seriously.
Oh, well, they never did say.
No, I know, but
never did.
All I remember when he was there was him constantly going to the pub. Quite so. But all I can recall is him constantly attending the lavatory in the Prince, and it was explained to me he has a weak bladder or something like that.
Very quickly.
He went very quickly. He seemed to have a technique where he was in and out, almost like a silent movie. And the other thing I recall, I don't know, you must do it.
He's probably got a plaque in the toilet.
Oh, I'd hope so. But if there wasn't one then, there certainly was at the time. Where he was putting up plaques, handwritten plaques.
Spent half his life here.
No, but he was putting up all the Bradish Defamation League little stickers all over, predominantly in the lavatory, but also outside it, which of course the landlord must have known. Well, everyone knew it was Farrow. They saw him doing it.
Yeah.
But and what astonished me, I mean, did you see those stickers, like his little cartoons, and underneath he put the Bradish Defamation League?
You know, he actually he bought a shit and put a shit in Bradish's car outside the Prince. Right?
I remember being told that.
He got the wrong car. He got the wrong car.
But did Bradish ever cotton on that all those stickers that were being...
No, because he was saying it was you doing it was me doing it.
Right.
And these people believed him.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Believed him. You know, Bradish thought you were doing all sorts of things.
I can imagine.
Phoning up Jilly and all stuff like that. And, I mean, he was, I don't know how people took him seriously, but
No, I
he
don't.
was quite clever
In that regard, yes.
in carrying out these vendettas and
Yeah.
trying to sort of pin it onto someone else. He did it all the time.
Well, he'd phone people up to meet each other even though they didn't know. Do you remember that? That was during that period. He would phone somebody up to meet somebody else, and then he'd phone the other person up to meet that person. Neither of them knew what was going on.
Oh, no, he never tried that on me.
But his Machiavellian side he'd honed by that point quite to a fine point. He was very Machiavellian, and it's the one thing he was not useless at. but it didn't really.
I'm surprised he was a year in 294.
August to August.
Yeah, amazing. That must have been the tucker, because she did have a soft spot for him.
You're joking.
No, she felt sorry for him. I mean, this was, and I'm sure she used to feed him when I was out. Yeah.
Like a stray cat.
She was quite sort of felt sorry for him.
What was she feeding him on? Raw herrings and cold tea?
Who knows? But yeah, dear, oh dear.
Well, it's made me want a cup of coffee, that has.
Yeah.
A nice cup of coffee.
I think it is coffee time.
It is. It is. And if I may say so, a couple of digestives.
And we've got I'm a ginger nut person.
Of course you are.
I'm a ginger nut.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'll be having some, if it's not too late now, I'll be having some really nice coarse cut marmalade on toast.
I'm expecting Lydia, but she's late.
Oh dear.
And I've got an overlap. You'll have to hop it before Carrie Ann gets here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Don't want any of that lock.
She hasn't turned up, but that's quite good. That's quite good, because I don't like overlap.
No, you don't want an overlap.
No.
Never has been a good idea, overlapping.
No, can't handle two of them. Right, well, I think I'll have a coffee.
Yes,
He's given me the taste for it.
indeed.
Okay, well, that was a nice conversation.
It was indeed so.
Yeah, it's nice to float back.
Yes. And it is afloat.
Yeah. Yeah, a looking down job.
Yes.
Looking
Time
down
travel
the
from above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, well, I'll say Abyssinia.
Abyssinia.
Yeah.